Hey everyone, it's Kristen. So I'm sorry, Dazzler. She's currently in the tray, the plastic tray again that I keep on the table, basically just for her. And she just woke up and did that little waking up noise, and it's just adorable. She's just cute. So today, Wednesday, we have, or not today, but for Wednesday, we have Black Knight. And it's interesting because it's a stat card, but Valkyrie is also on it. And I think that's because, I'm sure there are plenty of images they could have chosen for this stat card, but I feel like, chose that because they had many adventures together in the Defenders. I don't know. That would be my only guess. So his name's Dane Whitman. He first appeared in the Avengers. First appeared in comics in Avengers 48 in 1968. A stats intelligence 4. He's a geneticist and a physicist. Strength 2, speed 2, durability 5, energy 4, skills 5. Um, like I said, stat cards are my favorite, but I'm not really sure who I could compare him to that's comparable. So I'll have to kind of research and look into that and you see what I can come up with. So Black Knight has a really interesting story. Like Captain Britain, he's also kind of tied into the Arthur Merlin myths. Concerning his descendants, Sir Percy was a knight, was the first Black Knight during King Arthur's time. And so, how Dane got to be Black Knight is his uncle took up the mantle and became a supervillain. And he was mortally wounded in a battle with Iron Man, but he managed to get back to his nephew and confess his crimes. And basically, he asked his nephew to restore their family honor. So, the first time that the Avengers saw Dane as the Black Knight, of course they thought he was a supervillain because the original Black Knight that they fought was a supervillain. So he basically kind of proved himself by infiltrating the Masters of Evil, and after that they kind of granted him provisionary status. He wasn't a full blood Avenger. He wasn't a reserve member. He was just probationary, basically. So he inherited a castle in England, and he went there and saw the spirit of Sir Percy, and Sir Percy gave him the ebony blade. And what proved his worth the most to the Avengers, where they granted him full-fledged status, is when they were fighting Kang, and Kang had been given the power to kill the Avengers by the Grandmaster, and since Black Knight wasn't technically an Avenger, he was able to defeat Kang because he couldn't be killed by Kang. Anyway, so after that, he became an actual full Avenger. He joined the Defenders with Valkyrie. But the thing is, though, he basically, the Enchantress turned him to stone, and his spirit was transported back to the 12th century. And Valkyrie was there also to kind of look after him and stuff and take care of him. And so he existed in the 12th century for a while. He helped Merlin and Captain Britain save Camelot. And then at some point later, he was transported back to the 20th century, and we learned about the Ebony Blade's curse, that it just, it basically kind of can drive the wielder of it mad. But what happened is, and it eventually, turned Dane into stone again. But Sir Percy joined, with Dane, reviving him, and then joined with the blade to cancel out the curse. Like I said, one like a notable moment is that he also like in addition to basically almost single-handedly defeating Kang, he also killed with the Ebony Blade the supreme intelligence of the Kree during the Kree Shi'ar War. Let's see. Oh, and then I kind of mentioned this during when I was talking about Quicksilver. Um, when I was talking about how Crystal had other guys while they were married. Um, Black Knight was one of those guys. He loved Crystal, and he just was enamored by her, and but then he met Cersei in Eternal, and he kind of formed a bond with her too. But the thing is, though, he really found out that he loved Crystal, but in order to, because Cersei was slowly going mad because she had been infected by this incurable disease, and in order to save her, Black Knight was bonded with Cersei. And it turns out that the person who infected her with this disease was an alternate version of Dane, who decided since Cersei rejected him, then if I can't have her, then she's gonna be driven mad without me. Guys, characters in comic books do not take rejection well. Like I said, soap opera. Always. There was a time when he, was joined or and the leader of Ultra Force. It's a Malibu comic company, and there was a TV show, Ultra Force, and I think it was only 13 episodes. It was pretty good, but of course Black Knight wasn't part of that TV show, but just kind of throwing that in there for fun, for reference. Then he ended up going back to the 12th century again, where he faced Apocalypse and Exodus. But Exodus was friends with the body that Dane was put in, that his spirit was put in, so he wouldn't fight them. So, and then Cersei eventually was able to get them a portal back to back to the present day. But he gets back to the present day, and Onslaught had happened, so all the heroes are dead. I mean, they're not really dead. They just got pushed into a pocket dimension. But yeah. So, but he thinks they're dead. So he comes back. Even Crystal was dead. So he comes back and he joins Heroes for Hire because the Avengers are no more. Yeah, and we learned that Sir Percy actually wasn't the only person to wield the ebony blade. He was like the ninth person, but he was the only one like that was noble. And and when I talked about Captain Britain, I talked about MI13, and during the British intelligence agency that formed during like secret wars, when when the Skrulls invaded. And during that, he was a part of that, and he was actually given a heart of stone by Cersei, a literal heart of stone, because she thought he needed it to be able to rise above everything, because he was too like emotional or whatever. He and his ebony blade at the time was actually a fake that was, of all people, made by Dracula, because the blade craved blood, which kind of makes sense. And eventually, though, Dane found the real sword in Wakanda of all places, and he used that sword, but kept the fake sword too, to fight vampires who were trying to take over Great Britain. So yeah, and then after that, he went to Weird World. The basically Ebony Blade had corrupted him a little bit. He had killed somebody, so the Avengers were after him. So he went to Weird World with the intention of establishing a new Camelot, killed the ruler there, and basically set himself up as king. The Avengers came after him. Captain America took the Ebony Blade from him and determined that only Dane could actually wield the Ebony Blade, because almost the moment he took possession of it, he started to feel the pull, like, of the Ebony Blade to do, to do evil, to kill people, to, cause destruction. So he determined that Dane was the only one that could wield the Ebony Blade, and he should be left alone. So, again, comic books. Weird. Oh, you're so cute, Dazzler. She's so cute. Anyway. Oh, and then he made his way back to Earth, and he tried to be a hero. He fought Hydra, he fought Dark Elves. He actually died in Central Park with the Avengers, being stabbed by an obsidian blade, a dagger that was like, kind of the counterpart of the Ebony Blade. But he learned that part of the Ebony Blade's powers is that it will revive its host if they die. Craziness. So yeah, anyway. So just, I guess, briefly about Valkyrie. Of course, she's Brunhilde, I think her name is. I'm not positive. I want to say Brunhilde, but I know that's wrong because it ends with an E. So I'm going to call her Brunhilde, and I'm pretty sure that's wrong. But, she's the leader of the Valkyries. And she goes through Asgard, through Earth, through all the realms, and finds warriors and brings them back to Asgard, brings them back to Valhalla. And then when Odin, cut off ties to Earth and, the other realms, then she had to stay in Asgard. And, she was kind of resentful of that because then she felt like she couldn't do her job properly. So she found the Enchantress, and they kind of struck up a friendship. But then Valkyrie learned that Enchantress is not a good person. So she wanted to kind of break their partnership, but Enchantress wouldn't let her and actually imprisoned her and used her essence basically for centuries in order to give herself Valkyrie powers or give other people Valkyrie powers that she chose. And one of the people she chose was Barbara Norris. So Valkyrie, in a sense, her essence, herself, her appearance was in the body of Barbara Norris, and Barbara Norris's essence was trapped in the Asgard. Sorry, had a blank moment. I was like, "What am I talking about?" So yeah, and then she actually was put in charge by Odin of Moondragon, Drax's daughter. We kind of briefly talked about her, to teach her humility because she had basically self-proclaimed herself a goddess, and she needed to learn humility. So kind of Odin put Valkyrie in charge of her, like was her babysitter basically. And we, of course, talked about the times when she and Black Knight were, stuck in the past and the adventures they had with the Defenders. So the first time Moondragon was corrupted by the Dragon of the Moon, they were able to defeat her, but they didn't capture her. And then so the second time the Dragon of the Moon came back, they defeated the dragon, but at the cost of their own lives, and they turned to stone. Like all the Valkyrie and all the Valkyries and everyone else that was helping. Doctor Strange revived them. And, and later, Valkyrie was put in charge of finding Valkyries on Earth, and she chose Misty Knight, Dani Moonstar from the X-Men, so I thought that was pretty cool. I love that, she's part of that, and, like, she gets a flying horse as well. Oh, yeah, did I say that? Yeah, Dark Knight. Black Knight, he has a flying horse, too. Oh, anyway. Dani Moonstar, Hippolyta, and this mortal, and they were fighting Carolyn Le Fay, which is Morgan Le Fay's daughter, which, okay, Morgan, we're so used to Morgan Le Fay, and Morgan also sounds like a kind of old-timey name, But Caroline to me sounds like a very modern name. Granted, it's her daughter, so she is like a modern, incarnation. But it just, I don't know, it just sounds weird to say Caroline LeFay. I feel like they could have picked a different name. It's almost as bad as saying like Stephanie LeFay. I don't know. Just sounds, like I said, just sounds too modern to be attached to the LeFay name. So anyway, they fought and defeated her, but the mortal, her last name's Riggs. I remember that for sure because I remember like thinking of Lethal Weapon, Riggs and Murtaugh. Anyway, so her last name's Riggs, and she sacrifices herself in order to defeat Carolyn and save the team. And then she becomes the host body for Valkyrie. Oh, and I forgot to say that at some point, Barbara Norris, the body, was murdered. So then her Valkyrie's essence was free from her body. And so then her essence and her body were rejoined with the help, I believe it was with the help of Doctor Strange. So anyway, that's about her. Oh wow, I'm already like way over for this video. And then, Sith, at least we've talked about her recently. So, one thing I didn't mention is because most Asgardians have blonde hair. She actually did have blonde hair, but Loki, growing up, was jealous of how close Thor and Sith were. So he chopped off her blonde hair one day. And Thor he was super upset. He was super mad and demanded that Loki, restore it. So Loki paid some dwarves to restore her hair, but apparently he didn't pay them well enough because they chose to restore it with like the blackest of night, the essence of the blackest of night, because he didn't pay them enough to restore her golden hair. So it's magic hair, and as soon as it took root to her head, it started growing super long. I think this is a really cool picture of her. So, okay. Anyway, okay, so this is an interesting one, and I'll try to do this, faster. But Rawhide Kid, I was like, wait a second. I was not expecting there to be a Western character in this, this Marvel stamp series. I thought it would be all superheroes because Marvel does have plenty of superheroes. So, Rawhide Kid actually appeared first in 1955, and from like 1948 to like 1960, Western comics actually were super popular, and they had replaced superhero comics. Like, people after the war didn't want to, read about superheroes. They wanted to read about, the Old West. And I think also that's about the time when Bonanza appeared on TV. And so that also contributed to the Western comics popularity. And I was thinking, well, like, he seems vaguely familiar, but I still, like I said, I thought that was weird. So this is Captain America 192, December 75, also appears in Incredible Hulk number 175, May 74, and Marvel Team Up number 26, October 74. And this image comes from Western Team Up, November 73, art by Larry Lieber. He wrote and drew the series. Vince Colletta and John Romita Sr. So it says Rawhide Kid and Dakota Kid. And I feel like, of course, that's the kid part is in reference to Billy the Kid being one of the most famous, gunslingers and figures in the Old West. And so I was thinking, okay, but why does that seem so familiar? The Rawhide Kid, like I couldn't remember, and then I found it. So here this is from 1968, and I'm pretty sure I found it like at a flea market or something, or an antique mall, so it's not in the best condition. So I won't open it and read the whole thing or anything, but I'll just kind of tell you the basic premise of it. So you see the Rawhide Kid, and he's facing off against Red Eagle. He's a member of the Apache tribe. So the Apaches are, on their land, on their reservation, and there's this guy that is in the closest town to that. I think his name's like Ace. He wants to drive the Apaches off the land so he can buy it up really cheap, which he thinks the best way to do that is to start, a fight between the Apaches. They call them Redskins in the comic book, and the Palefaces, which is what the Apaches called, the white people. So the Rawhide Kid, he does his best to diffuse the situation, and because they come into town to get supplies, and the townspeople are not very nice to them at all. Ace's people beat him up. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's Ace. I'll have to double check. So his people beat them up, and then but the Rawhide Kid saves them, and then he takes them back to, the tribe, and says, I will make this right. I will talk to the people of the town. And the Chief Lone Cloud, says, thank you, my brother. And that makes Red Eagle mad. He's like, all pale faces are, oppressors. We'll never get along with them. So he basically goes out on his own, vendetta against, the townspeople. And what happens is Ace has his people ambush 3 of the Apaches who are just, by the stream giving their horses a drink of water. So they go back to the tribe and say, we were ambushed, and one of them is severely wounded. And so that's when Red Eagle's like, that's it, we're done. I'm going to take this into my own hands. And he has actually gotten to the point where he is very skilled with a gun. Like, you see, he's even shot on the cover. He even shot the gun out of the Rawhide Kid's hand. So he goes on this crime spree. He doesn't hurt anyone, but he goes on the crime spree, like stealing money from everyone. And basically, the Rawhide Kid gets a message to him and says, hey, meet me here at high noon, because it's always high noon, the shootout. And but he does it in this pass area where there's no civilians around, because he doesn't want anyone to get hurt. So they face off, and what happens the first time is there's this rattlesnake that's coming up behind Red Eagle. So the Rawhide Kid shoots the rattlesnake instead of Red Eagle, when they're facing off. And Red Eagle, he shoots him, kind of just grazes him. So he thinks he's won. But they face off again, and unfortunately, Rawhide Kid is the better shot, and he kills him. So he takes him back to the chief and says, it's unfortunate what's happened, but Red Eagle, he was a warrior, but he wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to change his mind. And unfortunately, this is how it had to end. So, and then the Rawhide Kid goes off on his next adventure. So, like I said, it's crazy that I just happen to have one of these. I'm pretty sure this is the only one. I feel like for some reason, I felt led that day, and I saw him, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. And it, you can see, obviously, it's a Marvel comic. And I thought, that's really cool. I don't have anything like that in my collection, so I bought a couple of different Western comics that I saw there. So anyway, Rawhide Kid, he was born in 1850. His mom died when he was young, and then his dad was killed, and so he went to live with his uncle, and then his uncle was killed, and when he was like 18, so then he left and, basically went off on his own and became the Rawhide Kid. Just to give you a brief overview. Like I said, I was very surprised to see that stamp, because I honestly thought it would all be like superheroes and, Of course, there was, there has been Conan the Barbarian and Cole the Conqueror and like Shauna, the Jungle Queen, you know, or Shauna the She Devil. Sorry, Sheena is the Jungle Queen. Anyway, so it just, yeah, interesting. I wonder if we'll get any more Western characters in this stamp series. So anyway, Dazzler slept through the whole video. Not surprised. She seems to sleep a lot during the day, and then she's super busy and active at night. But I think that's pretty typical for cats, right? I'm pretty sure it is. But anyway, so I hope you guys will join me for my next video. And until then, bye.